Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
Janine. Oh, it was Janine. Whoops, sorry.
Do we have any public comments that we need to speak to today?
Nope.
First item is the approval of the minutes from the November 8th meeting.
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, new business. Okay, Lauren, I'll turn that over to you.
So our office has received a number of concerns and questions about the Arts Commission. This have come from the community, commissioners, as well as people within Metro. And so we think it's prudent to ask for you all's approval to do an audit of the Arts Commission. This would include financial processes primarily, as well as possibly some of the workings of the commission. It would not encompass the scoring necessarily of the grants that are given out, because my understanding is that that is under review from a different group. But it would be kind of the processes where the breakdowns from getting the money to getting it distributed to the community and to the grants. But there's been a lot of conversations around it, and so we think that it's time for us to actually do an actual audit of it.
When would you try to time that in terms of planning that to get that into the schedule?
Immediately. Just because we have people coming off of another audit that are ready to go.
Okay.
Lauren, would your audit include complaints from employees and vendors and other stakeholders, or?
We could do interviews around that if they borderlined into HR type discussions. That would be turned over to human resources for them to look into if it was complaints against anybody within that were employees. But we could still talk to those within the community, the people we've received complaints from or concerns around. So that would still be done.
Thank you.
And this also would be, nothing that we have gotten has been severe allegations of malfeasance or anything like that that would launch an investigation. But that is always an opportunity, since that is our office. If anything came to light during our interviews or any of our work, as investigations can be spun off at any time.
Other questions or discussion?
When we have Councilmember Allen in a moment before she is asked to vote.
We're going to give you a pass on the vote.
To get you up to speed, so we're requesting an audit of the Arts Commission based on concerns from the community, commissioners, as well as individuals within Metro. It would primarily encompass financial processes from getting money to distribution of that money, with the exception of certain things that are being looked at by other groups. And so that is our request.
I think if you've got, I mean, that's what audit committee, or the audit function is for, is when you have people that are concerned, especially if you have multiple people from sort of different, maybe not even overlapping people that have some concerns to look into it. So happy to whatever, but I would move approval if that's how you do it.
Yep, we need a motion to add it to the audit plan.
That would be my motion.
Okay. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes.
All right, well, good afternoon. It's nice to be with you today. Our office recently issued a report on the Metropolitan Police Department's early intervention system. If I could, I'd like to recognize a couple of people. One would be Matt Morley. He's with the police department. He is a special projects manager. He was our point of contact. We appreciate all the assistance we received on this audit. Also want to recognize Nan Wynn, who's one of our senior auditors. She did all the work and appreciate the work that she did. What the early intervention system is a tool used by the police department to try and identify officers who may be under a material amount of stress and to ascertain if those officers need additional support. We invest a lot in our police officers. We expect a lot out of our police officers. People are people. We all go in season. So if you have a police officer who's maybe in an unhealthy season, let's get them the help that they need before they harm a citizen, wreck their careers. Just put them in a position to succeed. So simply stated, the way the process works, you can't really do this system justice in a venue like this, but it starts with data or indicators are being fed into this very sophisticated AI machine learning system. And it's basically running all these algorithms, doing sophisticated math, and they're assigning risk scores to individual officers. If those risk scores reach a certain level, one of the things that will be issued is what's called an action alert. The action alert will go to it goes to Matt's group, it goes to their human resources group, it goes to their commander and their supervisor. It's an electronic form, and what they have to do in that particular case is they have to do an assessment on the officer. The form gives them some guidance on different things that they could do. It could be an informal coaching session, it could be additional training, it could be a job performance plan. It could be if the officer, the supervisors typically are aware of what's going on they're the best people to know what's going on with their individual officers. They may say, we know about this, we're not going to take any action at this time. Whatever decision they make has to be approved by the command, that supervisor's chain of command. They come up with a plan and then they implement it. Okay. So given that high level lay of the land, there were 4 objectives of this audit. One, we looked at the indicators. Indicators are very important. That's what kind of drives your algorithms and drives your different scores. So we looked at, do you have a methodology in place to make sure those indicators are appropriate? How do we compare with other jurisdictions? The second question was, when you get an alert, is it being processed through the way the police department intends? Is it being properly tracked, monitored, sign-offs, and all that good stuff? Training would be the third objective. Are we training the police officers, departments on how the EIS system works, or early intervention system? If I say EIS, I mean, forgive me, I know we have a lot of acronyms. But are you giving training so they know what the mission is, how it works, and that sort of stuff? And then finally, we looked at general and application controls surrounding the system. What we found when it came to indicators, we definitely have a methodology in place to make sure that they are appropriate. You know, Matt's group's constantly looking at them. The way this system works, it's a machine learning system, so it's constantly looking at the data, trying to determine what are appropriate indicators for stress. It's even looking at different departments, different assignments, because what could trigger significant stress in one area would be different in another area of the police department. We benchmarked it against 10 different jurisdictions. We were in line with those jurisdictions in terms of what indicators that they used. In terms of the tracking, we pulled a sample of alerts. They work through the system the way the police department you would expect them to. Generally, there was one disconnect between how many, like you're supposed to have, in the procedures, there's 21 days you have, if you're a supervisor, to complete these forms. But in reality, on the ground, it was 35 days. No, they weren't all up past the 21 days, but we're just saying match your policies and procedures to what's going on the ground. Skipping the general application controls, that was a yes. They have controls to make sure data is protected. Access rights are appropriate in terms of people who are granted access have the minimum amount that they need to do their jobs. They redact information on tables that are sensitive that goes up, because this is a vendor that uses this machine learning system. In terms of the training, they are providing training. Nan went through and looked at the different training programs that some of these officers are going through. Now, we did do a survey. The survey, the purpose of it was to get a general feel for what's the perception of the early intervention system within the police department. You know, how often do they use it? Do they understand it? That sort of thing. Now, before we go into the survey, it's important to note, you know, on sampling, this is not a statistical sample. Typically what you're doing, you've got your population, and then you're pulling a sample, because you can't typically look at everything, and your goal is for whatever's going on in your sample reflects what's going on in your population. Well, that's not what this survey would do. It's just to get a general feel for how the officers feel about and the supervisors feel about this system. The general takeaways were they feel like the police department has a lot of resources to help them if they're in need, but there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between the value of the system or the understanding of what the mission of the system is, so making sure that it's not really a negative.
Punitive.
Yes, good word, punitive. If you look at the indicators, they're on page 4 of the report. Some of the stuff is going to be stuff like use of force, complaints. Oh, 5, I'm sorry, thank you. Really, inherently, if you're a police officer, your supervisor knows these things, you know these things. Sometimes it can seem like you're coming back and readdressing old hat. So one of our recommendations would be to just have a better marketing program for the system. And then the other things, Matt does a really good job of, he evaluates the system. And in fact, he's found issues in the past that there were a lot of false positives, false negatives. He worked with the vendor and fixed it. Matt has been here for a long time, has a lot of institutional knowledge. Formalize your policies and procedures that if he were ever to leave, that knowledge wouldn't go out the door with him. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you for your attention. Welcome any questions that you guys may have.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to the discussion?
No, sir, I think that's a very high-level, accurate synopsis there. It's obviously, there's a lot of details and a lot of math that's involved in it, but overall, the things that Brill and Nan brought up in the audit, we were aware of or working to address already. And some of the things, the audit actually covered through December of '22, and some of the things we've already repaired in 2023. So, yeah, it was a great experience, and it was good to have the piece of paper to address the things that had on our list to get done and the things that we wanted to add. So.
Well, thanks for everything
Thank you.
that you guys do. It's amazing. I know you got a lot of processes, and this is one of them. So thank you for everything you do to make us safe.
Yes, sir.
Who is entering the data into the system? Is it, does the officer say I was bit by a canine and put that in, or can, like, say we're officers and I know that, I don't know, you messed up or whatever it was. Can I report something on behalf of, or it has to be me, or he has to report on himself? I don't know who I'm asking.
So those would be two different entries. One would be a use of force entry, and so we capture all the use of force entries. Last year, I think we had around 3,500 pieces of paper documenting applications. But a complaint would be in a different entry that would be in our complaint system. So the officer fills out a form and goes through the chain of command. It's reviewed by a captain and then on up the chain of command for a use of force. So the officer self-reports that, and then it's reviewed by everyone else. The complaint itself would go either to the division of the officer, or it would go to the chief's office, who would then refer it to the division, and it would be investigated at that point, and then the merit of that complaint would then be reviewed, evaluated, investigated if needed, and then that would go, if it was a founded, sustained complaint, if there was disciplinary actions, all of those things have an input in the machine itself.
Because I understand, and it makes sense that officers would maybe feel like this is sort of a punitive thing, or if it rose to the level of concern that it would be punitive. Do you have concern that there's lack of compliance in the reporting of incidents at all? Because, like, I don't want to report on my buddy doesn't want to report on himself to cause the problem. Is that an issue possibly?
As far, we can't, as far as the math, we can't view into that scenario, but as a supervisor, as a policy, we hang signs up. We had the COB in place for some time. We have our OPA. We have supervisors. A very high ratio of supervisors to officers. They get out there on the streets and things like that. So we're always, concerned about the things we don't know, in that sense. But as far as we can't really address the things that we do not know.
Do we have best practices that's probably as part of the audit, or maybe it is a deliverable to sort of solve the problem of the punitive view of it, so that people will look at it more as a resource and an opportunity versus a punishment?
Absolutely. We've actually even written it into our policy, and we've taken great steps in the last 6 years to address
Awesome.
the perception. But we need to do better, as the survey revealed. It's officers' mindsets are, on some level a little, I don't want to say paranoid anyway, but.
Well, there's a stigma of mental health in general, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we try to protect our officers. And if we can, forecast or see something, have a conversation with somebody who may not even know he or she are struggling, that's our goal. That's
Yeah.
our main goal.
Awesome.
Other questions? Thank you for
Yes, sir.
what you do.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Metro Water Services billing?
Yeah, so last Friday on December 1st, we released a follow-up audit for Metro Water Services, water and sewer billing processes. This work was done by Elizabeth Andrews in our office. We appreciate her work. But basically, the follow-up audit, the objective was to follow up on two recommendations from the original audit that was released in March of 2021. There's only two recommendations in the audit. The first one was just for Metro Water Services to evaluate call volume data and determine optimal staffing for high volume months and to adjust staffing levels as necessary. And also to review call metrics to ensure staff adequately answered calls and ensured calls resulted in reasonable hold times and dropped calls or abandoned calls. And the reason for that recommendation, just during the original audit, they found that the answered calls had decreased and then hold times and abandoned calls had increased during the audit period. So to just follow up on that recommendation, we verified that staffing had increased. We reviewed their monitoring reports and found that all those metrics had improved since the last audit. So that recommendation has been implemented. The second recommendation was just to explore options to log calls on a detailed basis and to implement procedures for the level of detail to put on customer accounts when they receive calls. I think just during the field work and during the testing of the original audit, there were some inconsistencies about the level of detail across that were being noted on accounts. To address this recommendation, a new interactive voice response system was implemented. We verified that implementation. The procedures to address the level of detail had not been done, but this week after the report was issued, we did receive those procedures. So we're going to review those, and there's a chance that this audit or this recommendation has been implemented as well. So we have Shannon Fry, Amanda Deaton-Warrior with us from Metro Water Services. We appreciate their help, and we're here if you have any questions about the follow-up audit.
Questions or discussion?
No, I appreciate y'all's work. I've sent a couple people that have escalated some things, and you're always going to have one-off issues regardless of what your system is. But they've always been handled very, very efficiently. And if my constituents happy, then I'm happy. So they're happy, I'm happy. So we're good. Y'all do a great job.
Thank you so much.
So is there now current data or future data that shows that the implementation of A1 has resulted
Yeah,
in?
we got we did an analysis of abandoned calls, hold times, and they have improved. I think they're within their benchmarks now, so everything is good. Yeah.
No comments from water?
That's
good.
We always like a good audit. We really appreciate the thoroughness.
All right. Thanks for everything you guys do. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Lauren, give you this next bylaws annual review.
Okay, so annually, the audit committee reviews the bylaws for both the audit committee as well as the internal audit, Office of Internal Audit's bylaws. That does not mean they have to be changed in any way, but we do this annually. We make this recommendation a lot to a lot of different departments about reviewing processes and stuff annually, so we ourselves do it. They were provided to you all prior to this meeting. If there were any changes that anybody noted, we can make those, or these can be changed later on if something happens later in the year.
I'm too new to have a comment on the policies and procedures. Maybe next year.
I was about to say, that's the
Come back
unfortunate
to me
part.
next year. I might.
Pretty standard fare.
Are there any changes that you're recommending in this?
No.
So we can make a motion to accept as they are, or defer for more time to review.
Motion to approve.
All in favor? Motion carries. Project status?
This hasn't changed that much since y'all saw it a couple of weeks ago. We currently have about 10 projects that are going on. 4 or 5 of those are in draft reporting right now. The recommendation implementation, we only had one that was actually implemented, and that was from the EIS audit that was just presented to you. A lot of our audits don't end with 11/30 implementation dates, so since the last meeting, there just haven't been any that have been reported as needing to be implemented. But we're still on good track, we're still keeping up with those. So are there any questions about our project status?
Just one, this scheduling thing, so in January, y'all will begin to produce the plan that we'll okay that y'all then do. If these aren't all done, I mean, is that,
If the audit
you
plan
try-
isn't completed, a lot of times, sometimes we reevaluate what's on the audit plan. Is that still the scope of some of these audits? Do we still want to go that direction? Or is there another audit within that same department that we find more pressing? Or sometimes we carry them forward, especially if they're also in process. We're going to continue to do those. It's kind of an evaluation process. There are some times we move them from the main plan to the secondary list based on if we got a lot of recommendations for audits that we think are more pressing, we would move those. But you'll be able to see what they are in the plan.
Laura, is there anything that stands out to you right now that is, challenging or things that we can help you with?
I don't think so. We have been lucky enough to have a lot of great department heads that are helpful in not only helping us to scope our audits as far as areas that they have concerns around, but also being proactive and responsive to us. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then
Budget status and,
budget hasn't
staffing?
changed really either. Neither has staffing. For the budget, we're still under budget. We are still waiting to get those contracts with consultants signed, so that we can start using those and using that budget. And then for staffing, we are hoping to get to the January Civil Service Commission meeting to establish that lead investigator position.
Do we have any considerations that we need to discuss regarding future meetings?
We're meeting again next
Monday.
Monday.
Monday, yes,
right?
very soon.
Okay, and any particular topics there that we need to spend some time on today to get ready for next week?
An executive session.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the public meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.